Welcome, friends. US President Donald Trump has set out what he claims liberate US from migrant invasion through military aggression. He has called troops to rebellious Los Angeles to quell what his longtime aide, White House Stephen Miller, has termed as insurrection of the crowd against US laws and sovereignty. Protesters but have remained unfazed in their resolve to resist Trump regime. What is ensuing from the clashes between the elite National Guards and the determined protesters is no less than a civil war in US. Under the guise of restoring the old glory of US, Trump proposes to turn the wheel of history back to decades, if not centuries. He has consciously chosen the migrant hubs like Los Angeles as primary operation sites to implement its policies. Democrats too cherish and share the goal with their Republican cousins, but propose to implement the very same policy in a more subtle manner, which Trumpists disagree with. This inflammatory throwback cannot be executed except through massive violence and destruction of the productive forces on an unprecedented scale, that is, scale never seen before in US history. Contrary to what they both claim, take the US in a new era of infinite prosperity, they actually act to the detriment of global economy, with which is inseparably bound up the fate of US itself. Interestingly and paradoxically, the blind forces of history have turned Trump, the all-time, the lifetime servant of US capitalism, to a tool for its destruction, destruction of capital. As Trump policies continue to incite a civil war in US, he appears onto the political stage of 21st century as an idiot, intoxicated and blind gravedigger of capital. The myopia Trump suffers from and his ensuing inability to see the inevitable consequences of it, however, is not something new or unique to Trump. Unexceptionally, such blindness is shared with him by all representatives of decadent ruling classes in the past. Trump is forced to place a time bomb with his own hands under the throne he sits upon. US is going to set ablaze very soon, albeit the matter does not and would not end here. The US push to forced exit to its migrant populace is going to trigger an uncontrolled chain reaction the world over. Not only this migrant population thrown out of US is going to swarm its abundant homelands, but also the recipient countries would be inspired or forced, even against their will, to reverse their own migrations and push out their own immigrant population. This would completely disrupt the global supply chains and destabilize the world economy for a long time. A huge reactionary anti migrant wave going to take over the globe is already set in motion by Trump and his policies. World capitalism has got exhausted long back. In the state of its decay, in its imperial stage, it is organically incapable of offering or delivering anything progressive to the world, or it has become crippled and incapable even to deliver bread and employment to world population, satisfy even its most fundamental needs. The period of crisis, all capitalist states are looking for their own survival at the cost of others. The pursuit for capitalist globalization, trumpeted so loudly in not so distant past, is completely abandoned and totally forgotten. For more than a century, capitalism has lived through destruction of productive forces in wars, violence, bloodshed, and fascism. For decades, imperialists accused the Soviet Union and the Cold War for being an obstacle on the path to democracy, peace, prosperity, and stability. With fall of Soviet Union under Stalinists, nothing survives now for them to take refuge under. Global crisis of capitalism was not discounted as claimed by bourgeois think tanks, but in fact aggravated by the fall of Soviet Union under Stalinists and has since then peaked to its zenith. The two active war theaters in Ukraine and in Gaza, with more in the offing, are irrefutable proof of steaming out of world capitalism. Beyond any doubt, they prove that world capitalism has lost all its steam, and that is forever. Leon Trotsky, the co leader of Russian Revolution, besides Lenin, in program of Fourth International written in 1937, I talked about death agony of capital. Today, we see this agony more clearly on display in the US, the mainland of world capital. World capitalism has landed into irresolvable crisis, and that forever. Unfortunately, in 21st century, world capitalism is left with no real means to resolve this crisis. With its full might, it is striking back thus furiously in desperate attempts to preserve its rule and keep itself intact by fascistic force and military means. But these attempts are fetching in more and more crises, instigating wars outside and oppression inside the frontiers of all countries. The irony is, capitalism knows no better response to its crisis. History, in fact, has not armed it for that. While some plans to liberate US of its migrants, the blind forces of history seem to have their own plans to liberate humanity from the shackles of capitalism, dying and putrefying for long. The systemic crisis of contemporary capitalism is giving clarion call to international working class and impetus to its struggles against capital. The sleeping tiger is waking up and yawning, with its ranks dislodged and disintegrated for decades. The international working class has now started to wake up and rearm itself amidst this crisis. It will present its own answer, its own solution sooner than later to this crisis: the overdue destruction of capitalism through a socialist overturn from below. Let us join hands and work for it, dear friends. Our time has come. It has really come. Thank you for patiently listening to us, and good night.